There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Well, hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another Alfresco Friday Reads, and it's cold. I should have worn a light jacket. I'm a little bit cold. Thank God for hot coffee from the vending machine, and also maybe thank God that I don't have much to say this week. And part of what I want to say, I will film indoors later because I need the internet to do it. But I'm here. It might be the last one. How many times have you heard me say that before? What do we say? Cheers in Nihongo is... My God, I almost forgot it. It's been so long since I've been out drinking in public. Kanpai. But of course we don't say it for coffee. Just like, you know, nobody says vlog except me, so I like to be different, but kanpai. I never remember to say this when I'm filming out of doors, so I'm actually remembered to say it. Here is the week in review. Really rich experience to read the play. Yeah.
I think Thompson Highway was born on a reservation but didn't grow up on one, but then later went back and worked as a social worker in reservations, if I'm right in thinking that. So he's really building on the experience that he's had working in communities with a lot of difficulties and challenges because of that history that you've been talking about when he's writing these plays set on this fictional reservation, which it was originally going to be a series of 7, and I think only 3 are written so far.
Interestingly, in fact, he wasn't born on the reservation. He was born in a tent in a snowbank during like one of his father's or his parents' caribou hunting trips. In the north of, so their home reservation is what is given as his place of birth, but he wasn't actually born there. He was born about 200 kilometers further north.
Memoir by an Indigenous author who was born in British Columbia, Canada. His name is Jordan-Fenton, and his latest work is called Nishka. It came out in 2020, and I have just read it for Indigathon in 2021, and it's one of the most impactful books I think I've ever read.
They're really not a well-known couple of rebels, so the more I can get their voice out there and you go and have a read of this story would be fantastic.
Oh my God, what a cliffhanger. So I cannot remember the last time that I had somebody tell me about a book of kind of history or nonfiction that was this gripping. That is an absolutely incredible story.
I'm glad you feel like that because I do love these 2 women. That I've taken them to heart.
Well, in fact, I have had an excellent reading week, but didn't get a lot accomplished. Got a lot of great reading done, which is the whole point of the exercise, right? But I thought I would easily finish 2 of the shorter books. 2 things I didn't realize. They were deceptively short, and also they were so fantastic, there was no way I was going to rush. Maybe point number 3 is I did push myself to finish a whole bunch last week, and I can't do that 2 weeks in a row. Well, I started a bunch of great stuff. I haven't finished a darn thing. No bails. So, there's a cute little girl playing on the playground set just in front of me. So you're going to hear her cute little cartoon voice. And I think it's about an hour later than I usually film outdoors, so there's a lot of traffic noise, and we're just going to go with it because I always worry about that kind of stuff, and then when I'm editing, it barely shows up in the video, and most of you tune in for all of the things that might go wrong in my videos, so we'll just keep going. Oh, by the way, COVID update. After our 4th wave ended, I don't remember when 2 months ago, I think, the 4th state of emergency, I don't remember what wave it was, 3rd or 4th state of emergency was canceled. I think we have one of the lowest COVID rates in the world. Thursday, 14 new cases, not in the country of Japan, but in the city of Tokyo, which is, we're talking 40 million people. And yesterday it was 20 new cases. So it's virtually not present in the atmosphere. I'm not changing my behavior, but I probably could, actually. When it's that low, I don't know anywhere else in the Western world where the cases are that low. Certainly not Canada. But I did wear a mask walking here. So, on to the books. I started 4 books. Let me talk about the one that's on ebook first, so I don't have to remember the title and author any longer than now. It's called Born Into This by Adam Thompson, who is an Aboriginal writer from Tasmania, the island of Tasmania in Australia, or off the coast of Australia. And I'm really enjoying it. I don't think it's maybe going to be a 5-star read, but certainly going to be a strong 4-star read. Really well-crafted stories about Aboriginal people on the island of Tasmania. They're very political stories, and in order for it to be a 5-star read, I'd need to see more layering than I've encountered so far, but they're really good, extremely well-crafted, and fiercely political, but grounded in characters that jump off the page. But almost every story has a combination of Aboriginal characters dealing with stupid fucking racist white Australians, and climate change or destruction of their environment, and somehow feeling cut off or seeking their Aboriginal heritage. And many of the characters are deeply involved in political action. So it's very interesting. It's one of the more political collections of short stories I can remember ever reading. You know, it's only white people that have the luxury of writing fiction where politics doesn't really cross their minds very much. And that would be, let's say, white men and even white straight men. Those are the ones that don't have to worry about politics. Really enjoying that one. Also, halfway into this middle grade novel, Fatty Legs, by Margaret-Olemaun Pokiak-Fenton, and co-written with her daughter-in-law, Christy Jordan-Fenton. And the illustrations are by Liz Amini-Holmes. Oh, I love this. I mean, it's such a beautifully put together book. Glossy paper, all kinds of beautiful artwork. But the prose is really quite wonderful, and the story is very compelling. It's about a Inuvialuit. I have now double-checked the pronunciation straight from the mouth of the authors, and the correct pronunciation is Inuvialuit. Young woman. Well, it's the true story of Margaret-Olemaun Pokiak-Fenton as an Inuvialuit child begging her father way up north. The Inuvialuit people is one subgroup of the Inuit in the far north, and she begs her father to let her go to residential school. And he doesn't want her to let her go because I think he went, or his grandparents went, or lots of other people in the community went, and he knows it's horrific. But he tries to explain to her how bad it is, how cruel the nuns are, but she won't take no for an answer. She's dying to learn how to read. So eventually he relents, and she goes, and she has a horrible time. One of the other things that's not well understood that I'm beginning to get a preliminary understanding of about the residential schools is that there was more slave labor than education. There was so little actual teaching going on, and they just had them working out in the fields or the gardens or cleaning. And so she arrives at the school, and they say, oh, there won't be any formal classes until the autumn, and this is in the spring. So they just have them gardening and frozen in poorly heated rooms. And I mean, the number of crimes against humanity that have already been perpetrated on her, it's just unbelievable. And it is beautifully written and illustrated. So I thought this would be one of the ones I would finish, but there's no way that I wanted to rush it. I have to say that this month of Indigathon reading, along with a little bit of other reading, but mostly the focus being on Indigenous books, fiction and nonfiction, is by far the best reading month I've had this year. And I don't think December is going to top it. So it's going to be my prime reading month of the year. I have also started this biography of a Métis woman whose life spans the prairies and what later became Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. She lived to be 99, and she was a Métis woman whose immediate family, like we're talking parents, aunts, uncles, were intimately connected to all of the main historical events of the mid to late 19th century about the Métis people in the West. We're talking the 1871 Red River settlement and the Métis self-government there that was squashed by the government, Louis Riel. Her people were intimately connected with all of that. And then 15 years later with the 1885 resistance. We used to call it a real rebellion before we realized the Métis were the good guys and the Canadians were the assholes. And I'm still trying to convince Canada that that's almost always true. And her people, some of her Métis relatives, aunts and uncles, were on one side and some were more loyal to the Canadians. And after that was violently crushed, she spent the rest of her life, I'm not far enough into it to confidently say that she hid her Métis identity, but she certainly didn't broadcast it, not even to her own family. So she was known as this pioneer, but she didn't make a big issue of the fact that she had indigenous, specifically Métis heritage. So, fascinating biography. It's quite academic, but I'm so interested in Métis history, having read quite a bit of it this year. This is particularizing it in the life of one fascinating woman. And all of those have been so interesting. And then this one has taken my breath away by the beauty of its prose. And I'm only 25 pages into it, and I am just a smitten kitten. This is from New Zealand, a Maori novel, Patricia Grace's Potiki. The prologue, I wish I probably have time to read it to you, but I'm not going to. But it is one of the most beautiful pieces of writing I've read this year. I excerpted from it in my book quotes on Instagram and Twitter. And I don't know exactly, I think it's set way back in time. And then we go into the actual novel, and the main character is Roimata, and she is a Maori young woman, and it opens with her talking about her husband and children, and then the story goes back to when she was just the neighbor friend of this guy, Hemi, and had been away from the home settlement, and how they got together, which they haven't gotten together now, hasn't caught up to the present yet by the end of chapter 3, but and the lush Maori vocabulary that isn't translated, I love that so much. And there's a Maori dictionary online that I'm just plunking stuff. Usually I just go to Google and say translate, and it comes up. But so many of them were coming up, were deferring to a Maori English dictionary that I've just got that open on my browser. And there's one or two words of Maori vocabulary on every page. And I know there's a certain kind of reader who doesn't like untranslated foreign vocabulary, but I thrive on it. Now, it does bother me if I can't find it. If it's not on Google, I think you really, if you want people to enter into the fictional world that you're creating, but I don't think otherwise. If it's available, easily available on the internet, I don't think it should be translated, or I don't. If there's a glossary in the back of a novel, I rarely check it. I always go to Google first, but then, if not. But there isn't a glossary at the back, and that's totally fine. I'm finding everything. She is a beautiful writer, and it's the first anything, really, I've ever read about Maori culture, fiction or non. I am in love with this book so far. So that is what I've started. Did I mention I'm having an absolutely fantastic Indigathon, and I've gotten to every book? I have started every book on my TBR except the one spare, which I won't get to. And I had the one bale of where the audiobook, where the Joy Harjo narrating her own audiobook was making me ill, but everything else has been a really, really positive experience, and I've gotten to all the books. The uncharacteristic wisdom that is responsible for some of that is that I chose short books. So yeah, I'm really having a fantastic time, and I don't think I'm going to be ready to stop Indigathon at the end of November. I think I'm going to carry it on into the foreseeable future. I didn't finish anything. I thought I would easily be able to finish 2 books, but regardless of that, and I think those 2 books I will be able to finish over the weekend, but regardless of whether I do or I don't, I am going to be starting 2 short books for 2 upcoming buddy reads. And when I say upcoming, I mean, upcoming in the next few days. One is with Roz, who is recovering nicely. She had a fabulous video about a collection of indigenous poetry from America. I hope I'm right saying America. Yes, I'm right. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. We are going to read this novel from the Faroe Islands. The Old Man and His Sons by Heðin Brú. And I first found out about this because Eric R. Anderson, I'm so jealous, he took a holiday to the Faroe Islands, and he took this book with him to read. I don't remember if I ever heard that he finished it and reviewed it, but I remember I added it to my TBR when he showed it off as he was on his way to the Faroe Islands. Now, I have a strange fascination with the Faroe Islands, and it's one of those things where if I explain why, you're going to think I'm even more of a nerd than you already thought I was. It was just one of those things where, I don't know, there was some passing reference in a book or an article about the Faroe Islands, and I was home with lots of time to kill, sitting in front of my computer. We're talking about 10 years ago. I was in Tokyo, but it's early days of my life in Tokyo. And I just went down this rabbit hole about the Faroe Islands, reading about its history and culture and all the politics of the colonial blah blah blah, and I wanted to read a novel about it, and I found one, but it was by an American author, and I never remember it, so I'll put the GIF up here. And I read it during those years where I wasn't much of a reader. It might have been one of 4 books I read that particular year, and it wasn't very good, but it was still interesting. And I've always kind of carried this torch for no particular reason. I can't remember what it was that I read that first had the reference to Faroe Islands, but every time I hear Faroe Islands, my ears prick up. So that's why when Eric mentioned it, I bought it, and then I think with my book haul I showed it, and Roz said, let's buddy read it, because she had it too, so we're gonna this week. And it is about an old man and his sons on the Faroe Islands. And also this week, we're still sorting out the details. This may be a conventional buddy read, or it may just be a let's read the book and talk about it without having checked in on it beforehand. Zoom chat. I think we're leaning towards the latter. In any event, it's my first anything buddy read or quasi-buddy read with Ben of Doom Antidote. Oh, sorry, you want to know what it is? It's this Jeanne Rhys novella, After Leaving Mr. Mackenzie. And I don't remember why I suggested to him. I think he'd read another book by her, maybe. That was it. And I said, well, I have this novella. Would you like to buddy read it? Like I say, it might just be that we'll show up on Zoom next weekend and talk about it not knowing what each other thought, which is, I love doing that. I'm doing one of those this weekend too. So that's what's coming up. And here's a sneak preview of some coming attractions. Attraction might be a bit of an exaggeration on my channel. I have a stack of 10 short but sweet books. They're not sweet in the sense that most of them don't have happy endings, because hello, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. I read literary fiction. You are my 4th guest from Kenya, and I think I maybe had 4 Canadians on. So this is fantastic.
You know, as I was telling you, I'm actually surprised you've not had as many Nigerians, because when Kenyans think of readers on the continent, we think of Nigerians.
Wow, there's so many writers.
You're slacking, Sean.
Well, I'm going to be counting on you for some introductions.
It's been compared to 100 Years of Solitude. So it's that very epic, multi-generational, it takes place over 4 generations type of book, very complicated interweaving of families. So it's a little bit difficult to summarize, but basically the story starts in the early 1800s, when at a time when 17,000 Chinese workers were brought over to build the railway in the West. As the story progresses, it gets into the time of when a head tax was put on, so that Chinese people, so that meant that it would cost 2 years of their wages to be able to pay for a single family member to come over. So there's all these men stuck here who couldn't bring their families or spouse over. And then, of course, there was the Chinese Exclusion Act, and there was a time where nobody could come over. So it kind of creates this pressure cooker going on in Canada, which Sky Lee explores.
Absolutely stunningly gorgeous cover, which is probably the main reason I bought it. I'm making connections in my mind that the etymological evidence does not bear out, because to slime someone and to slate someone, you could see that there's a difference in degree, and they're not exactly the same, but to make a connection between them. But that's not the connection that's here. The connection...
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
There is a lovely road that runs from Ixapo into the hills.
Ixapo.
Did you just steal my drink? No, it's fine.
There's a lovely road that runs from Ixapo into the hills. I'm just going to guess, because that sounds vaguely like an African place name, that it might be the canonical African novel Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe.
No.
That's what I got. Thanks for watching.